28th of October. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Environment and Economy Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Tuesday, 8th of October. We shall start with any apologies, please.
Thank you, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor Chris Bissell, and we have a substitution, Councillor Andrew Parkhurst for Councillor David Coggins-Cogan and Councillor Sam Swash for Councillor Dan Rose. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest, including any whipping, to receive any declarations and advise members accordingly. Any to be received? Nothing received there. We'll move on to agenda item 3, minutes, page 5 to 8, to confirm as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on 10th September 24. Go through them one page at a time. Page 5. Page 6, 7, and 8. Can I have a mover? Okay, moved. Seconder? Seconded. And have a show of hands, all those in favour of those minutes. Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 4, the forward work programme and action tracking. I'll hand over to Margaret.
Thank you, Chair. So the forward work programme starts at page 13. So the next few months, you can see there's quite a lot on the agenda. There's no changes on there at the moment. So, but if we have a look at the bottom of the page 15, we'll notice that we've got the members' briefings on the 22nd of October, which is the update on the 20 miles per hour new guidance. I have had responses from quite a lot of you, so if you haven't already said which session you'd like to attend, then please let me know. So the 1:30 p.m. is in person in the Allen and Deeside room, and then there's a Zoom at 5:30. So does anyone have anything else they would like to add to the forward work programme? Katie's indicating.
Just a quick correction, and I think it's the 12th of November where we've got the update on the residual waste collections change. In the purpose and report, that seems to have carried forward something to do with another report. I've gone off. Referring to electric vehicles and alternative fuels, that's a different report. So the description's wrong, I think.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that goes, looking at that goes with the one in December, the conversion of the FCC one. Thank you, Katie.
Okay, any other comments on the forward work programme?
Councillor Pearce is indicated, Chair.
Councillor Pearce?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, thanks, Margaret. The update on the 20-mile-an-hour guidance, unfortunately, I'm away on holiday for a week over that period. Is there any opportunity to get the information after the meeting, please? I'm not able to zoom in. Thank you.
Yeah, that should be no problem at all. We'll arrange for the team to contact you and either meet with you individually or pass the information on.
Okay, that's very good. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Parkhurst.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can we add an item for an update on the strategy for public lavatories?
Thank you.
That's just been very recently already. Local toilet strategy has only recently been to committee and was adopted, I think, in March.
Okay, Councillor Parkhurst, if you maybe not being a member of this committee, obviously substituting, if you want to refer back to that report and see if you still wish to bring a different angle to it or whether you're happy with that.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just conscious that public toilet provision is of major concern to the residents of this county, and there doesn't seem to have been any change in the way public toilets are signposted, or indeed any change to the provision. So I do think there should be some review somewhere in the forward work programme so we can see the progress being made. Thank you.
Yeah, so the proposals that were in the reports in March actually did propose some changes and improvements to the facilities, but obviously that's subject to capital funding, and so we've put a bid in for some funding. We're waiting to hear the outcome of that bid at the moment, so subject to us receiving the funding, we'll make improvements, but certainly an update report could be brought maybe in the new year once we know where we are with the funding.
Thank you very much for that. Anything else for the forward work programme? No, nobody in the room or online. The action tracking?
Thank you, Chair. So moving forward onto page 17, the street scene standards task and finish group, that is ongoing. Chris, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, good morning. The street scene standards will fall in sequence with some of the other work that we've got ongoing at the moment, namely around HAMP, which is due to be discussed later today. The street scene standards will be dictated heavily by the outcome of the HAMP report, so it makes sense that one would follow on from the other.
Great, thank you. The next one, the 5-minute parking outside schools. My understanding is that the task and finish group are meeting on the 30th of this month, and Anthony Stanford will provide an update following that meeting for this committee. The annual performance report, the suggestion that we have a members workshop, that is work in progress. And then the forward, the access barrier review, that has been factored into the forward work programme. For it's on there, so it won't drop off. It's there, but it'll be put in when at a suitable time in consultation with the Chief Officer. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Lloyd.
Yeah, just on the access barrier, I was a bit curious, why does it say in the last column status completed? I presume it's not.
It's because it's actually been put onto the forward work programme so that we don't lose. It's actually on page 15. It's their action, but it seems to be added access barrier review update report. So once it appears on the forward work programme, that part of it is completed. That's the logic. Thank you.
Councillor Crease.
Yeah, it's particularly concerning for me, the access barrier item. I know there is much noise in the background related to this, and I've been working with some individuals and some groups in Connors Quay, and there's great concern that we're still in the situation where access to areas of the coastal path are access to the coastal path has been prevented in some instances for people with disabilities. And I think this has been an issue for a very, very, very long time. The council have been aware for a very, very long time. And I just find it a bit incomprehensible that we're quite happy to sit here and break some Welsh legislation that's been in place since 2010. And it really would be helpful if it was escalated rather than being something that just get put onto the forward work programme or moved around. It needs to be addressed and addressed quickly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Crease. I'll just allow the Chief Officer to respond.
So we are well aware of the concerns from the communities and all different sectors of the communities as well. We did have a discussion about this in March of this year. We had a really constructive meeting with the police last week, and I would hope as a result of that we'll find a solution, and the first people we will speak to are the local members in relation to that.
Thanks for that assurance, but I think the local disability groups need to be included in any discussions about any potential resolution to the problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Margaret? No?
Chair.
Okay, if we can move to the recommendations on page 9. I have a mover and seconder for those recommendations to accept the forward work programme and progress on the action tracking.
Move.
It's moved. Seconded? Seconded in here. Can I have a show of hands, all those in favour? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. We shall move on now to agenda item 5, which is review of reduced opening hours at household recycling centres. And if I can bring in the Chief Officer.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Borodar, good morning, members. So just a brief overview of the purpose of the report, and then I'll hand over to Chris to take you through the report. So back in August 2023, work started on the budget for this financial year, and we put forward a number of options at the time for members to consider around the opening times for our household recycling centres. And I understand a few workshops or briefing sessions had been arranged as well. We decided to close the decision was making as part of the budget setting to close those sites for 2 days per week, and that was deemed to be the most efficient at that time. But following that, members have requested an update on how that's worked, and I think I think Councillor Pearce in particular raised concerns around queuing outside some of the sites. Initially, when we first moved to that change, I just wanted to, if I may, Chair, clarify a point I think maybe that's been taken possibly through the word, we've reworded it incorrectly or not been clear enough, but we're not advocating the introduction of a new booking system. We already have a booking system for certain waste streams for asbestos, mattresses, and now some other things like engine oil and tyres. So if members feel that queuing outside a particular HRC site is a problem, then one solution is to introduce a booking system for all waste streams, but we're not advocating that. I think the wording in the report could have been a lot clearer. So, we'll take that back as a learning point. That's, we're not actually advocating that at the moment. We already have a booking system. It's nothing new. This is no new system that we're trying to bring in at all. But it was one of the solutions, if it's such a massive issue, and people feel so strongly about it, then that is the option, and that's what some local authorities have chosen to do. But this report is essentially an update about following those approved changes to the opening hours. So it gives you the rationale for it. So Chris will take you through that now, and I'll hand over to Chris.
Good morning. So just to follow up on the points that Katie made, really, we were asked to put forward potential efficiencies in order to set a balanced budget for the council. As a service, we put forward significant savings from service delivery, many of which we've delivered with very little impact on customers. And the changes around the HRC provision were one of the ones that were approved in this very room by Scrutiny and voted by full council. In the early days of those reduced opening hours, there was some expected confusion around people's routines being disrupted, but that seems to have subsided substantially now, and those initial concerns about queues have been resolved. We have had several members get in touch with us in the days since this report became public to state that queuing at HRC sites is not a problem, and they don't see it as a problem, and they don't feel that there is a need for a booking system. The booking system is not the main reason that this report exists. This is about giving an overview of the decision-making process that we went through in order to close those sites 2 days a week. We consulted with the cabinet member, with the chief officer team, and with TUs in order to come up with an acceptable way of reducing those opening hours. Weekend working became a challenge for us, and expecting people to work 2 days at a weekend was something that the TUs were just not going to move on. They wouldn't accept that any member of staff would have to work a Saturday and a Sunday. So through negotiations with them and negotiations with staff, chief officer team, and the cabinet member, we landed on a model that left all sites closed on a Wednesday. We've now been able to turn that single day of closure into quite a significant operational advantage, meaning that maintenance work and other things that are easier to do without the public on site are now carried out on that Wednesday, and it has given some operational benefits that we hadn't put forward at the time, but we do continue to see that as a benefit. So happy to take questions, really. The report speaks for itself. If there are any questions or comments, then we'd be happy to take them.
Okay, thank you, Chris. I'd just like to start, nobody's indicating just yet, so I'll just start by saying that likewise, we've all had comments with regard to the booking system. There is already the booking system in place, but it's my position to say I'd recommend that we remove recommendation 2 from this report, if that's seconded. That's seconded.
Second that, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. And then I just have one question, which people find a little bit difficult with the fly tipping thing, which is mentioned in the impact assessment. No significant increase in fly tipping, but then I go back to 102 and it says the tonnage at each site has reduced. Has there been any assessment or analysis of where that tonnage is going to? If the tonnage is reducing, but we're not getting reports of fly tipping. And as an addition to that, of course, I report a lot of fly tipping to my street scene supervisor. Can that be, is that definitely recorded back into the system for somebody that might just deal with that or action that on the day, and therefore it's not recorded in the figures? So they're my first questions before I bring anybody else in.
Okay, so the in 102, when we talk about the tonnage being reduced, that is referencing the impact of the vehicle permit that was introduced in 2003, not necessarily the reduced opening hours. So when we talk about those tonnages reducing in 102, that is specifically about the reduction in traders using the sites unofficially, should we say. So we have got figures that show before and after the introduction of that vehicle permit, and there was a reduction. So we believe that was evidence that people who shouldn't have been using the site were no longer using the site. That is a slightly separate point to the one referenced later when we talk about fly tipping in direct correlation with the opening hours. What I would say on that point is that where we record our fly tipping figures is different to where housing record theirs. And so we're doing a piece of work at the moment to try and correlate those two pieces of information and just make sure that those trends are managed cohesively. Because at the moment, if one person's having a problem, the other person, the left hand may not know what the right hand is doing. So we're doing a piece of work at the moment to join up those pieces of data and make sure that, one, we're recording it accurately and we're measuring it and managing it appropriately, but equally that we can take that one council approach and come up with a common solution for that problem.
Yeah, but in addition to that, the area coordinators are required to report it, so it should be captured on CRM. Then it can be monitored, through our data. So it is captured.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just say that thank Katie for a comment at the beginning where it's now been decided that she wasn't advocating a booking system. I couldn't really see how this would work. It's a bureaucratic process. I did have a number of questions, so I'll still go through them. On 103 of the report, it gives the manning levels, and obviously being a Buckley council, I'll focus in on Buckley, and it says operatives per day. But when I arrive up the slope at the meet and greet and they ask what you've got, there's sometimes 3 people there. I don't know why it takes 3 people to have a meet and greet, and there's certainly more than 4 on site the times that I've been there. And I would agree that, yes, I did raise it in the early days. The queuing was horrendous. It was in the press. It has reduced. I've been there sort of ad hoc times, and there's been no queues. There's been a few people depositing the waste, but it does seem to have got a little bit better. In section 2, it talks about the resource implications. If this was to go ahead, which I don't see it going ahead now, and I welcome that, and I have supported the deletion of recommendation 2. But there would be certainly a cost to set this up. There would be a cost to administer it, and it's obviously there's no presentation on these proposals, so it was a non-starter, basically. Now you talk about site maintenance on a Wednesday. What sort of maintenance would be required other than moving skips out and moving skips in? So I'm just wondering what maintenance work is actually done there. Yes, there is a booking system for mattresses and such like, and we agreed with that. But I think that, when we look at risk number 4, I think it is, I thought this was the reason behind it, which again, I'm glad you've dropped it. In risk 4 on page 24, the introduction of a booking system will improve data collection. And my view is, and this is my view, that this was all about data collection. But it becomes a bureaucratic process. When I live in Drury, not far from the site, I would imagine the whole process for me to make a booking to take a bag of waste to the skip site would take longer than actually loading the car and driving there. So we don't need to put this onto the people of Flintshire. So I really support the deletion of recommendation 2, and I hope we've seen the last of this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mears.
Thank you. If I could, Katie and I will address the points between us really, but just to the first point around the numbers on site, we do have 4 people rotated on the site. Those figures per site are rotated in on a regular basis, and the team are restricted in terms of the number of people that they can put on shift. If there are additional people on shift, they will quite often be drivers from the hook lifts that come to take the material away. It could be the supervisor who's there. It could also be the charge hand who's giving toolbox talks. So we will have other Flintshire staff on site, but the rota for each site is set with those numbers so that we can control those costs appropriately. In terms of the maintenance on site, we have lots of welding jobs. Skips get broken more often than I would like them to. So we do have on-site welding from time to time. Equally, the Wednesday closures has given us the opportunity to remove skips from their position and do a much more thorough clean in the area as well. I'm sure you all recognise the setup, and the skips are quite close to the wall, so we're able to move those out and send a couple of people in. It does massively reduce the number of people that are required on site, and we believe that we've realised some operational benefits. I'll let Katie address some of the other points.
Yeah, I think Chris has pretty much covered everything. I think the only one you mentioned was about number of people meeting and greeting you on the entrance. And again, that's a supervision issue for us to take away. If that's happening, they should be spread across the site. With one person on the meet and greet. That's how we've set it up, and that's how they've been trained to deliver the service. So that's an operational matter that we'll take away. I think the costs in terms of setting up and administering a booking system, the system's already in place, so there would be no additional costs for us in terms of setting up a system. That's already functioning for us as a back office system anyway. But obviously there would be potentially it'd be more onerous for site staff potentially in terms of their monitoring and how they receive the data. So yes, there would have been a bit more work there, definitely. But as Chris says, the closure on a Wednesday, certainly in terms of the welding work, in terms of skips, it's safer for us to do it there than, and it means we can do it in a weekday rather than asking someone to come out of hours to do those jobs. So it's certainly saving us in terms of costs in that respect.
Can I come back, Chair, please? Can I come back, Chair, please, on one item?
Yes, by all means.
Yeah, thank you for the explanation. That is accepted. Yeah, I often wondered about the gap between the skip and the wall, particularly when you dump rubble. And there must be a lot of equipment that actually misses the skip and actually goes between the skip and the wall. Can I make a suggestion that you look at some sort of arrangement where a flap covers the gap between the skip and the wall, and therefore nothing would go down between the gap? And I think that would aid your operation a lot better and perhaps save you some money. But if you like, I'll send you some information on that. But I think that yeah, I've often wondered about that, the amount of stuff that goes down there, because it all has to be manually brushed up, doesn't it? And I would imagine that that's going to add to the operator's time and the cost. So that's a suggestion, not a criticism. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Pearce. Councillor Lloyd.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks. Yeah, I'm really pleased we're removing recommendation 2. Not a lot to say on it really because it's been removed, but I really didn't think it was a good idea because you know, people are just going to turn up not booked and then turned away, and then probably they've already loaded it, so they're probably going to dump it somewhere else. You know, people can't get online, telephone, you know, he's not 1, 2, 3, 4 is not always quick to respond to. So yes, I'm glad that's gone. On recommendation 1, I'm not sure I'm happy with the word welcomes really, because it sort of seems that we're really happy about it. So I'd just say agree really, not welcomes in recommendation 1.
I'll second that, Chair. I'll second that.
Thank you, Mike. On the times, I did originally prefer option 1. I thought for the reason that I've gone against it now is because I realised that Saltney is the distance from Saltney to Sandycroft, and Buckley is similar, and Sandycroft and Buckley would be closed at the same time. So I'm really preferring option 2 now, which is what we're having at the moment. So I'd like to propose option 2. If we get a choice of the options, I propose option 2 stays. That's it, Chair. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. That's a review that's already in place. So we're not voting on options 1 or 2. Option 2 is already in place. Councillor Swash.
Thank you, Chair. Like others, I wholeheartedly support the recommendation moved by yourself and seconded by Councillor Pearce to remove recommendation 2. I also welcome the Street Scene Department's U-turn on this in the face of its deep unpopularity with the people of Flintshire. I note that in yesterday's announcement of the new Labour Independent Coalition, that the leader of the council said that the new coalition cabinet is, and I quote, committed to putting residents at the heart of everything we do for Flintshire. With that in mind, would any of the cabinet members present like to learn from this experience and make a commitment to U-turn on other deeply unpopular plan decisions, such as the 3 weekly bin collections and the Aura contract?
Thank you, Councillor Swash. I'll just take that as a statement. I don't see anybody wishing to comment on that one.
Councillor Dolphin's next.
I've got Councillor Wakeham. Is it Councillor Wakeham?
Thank you. It's just a question, just for my own thing. Option 1 for the recycling centres. Why did that take more staff? I was just curious. And there's another one. Sorry. Oh, that was it. Just on the I know option 2's the 2's gone now about the booking system, but I did a lot of research into it and not Shropshire Council, sorry, Newport Council, after implementing theirs, saw an 87% increase in fly tipping. Just to keep you in the loop. Thank you.
Thank you. As I say, we're certainly not wedded to the idea of a booking system. We simply put it forward as a potential solution to the problem that had been posed to us 6 weeks after the change. To explain why that rota takes more people would take more than the time we have allotted here. The simplest way to put it is that TUs want people to have 2 days off in a row, effectively. And so in order to populate the weekends and give people 2 days off in a row, you had to backfill certain shifts. So you need more people to just populate that simple 5-day pattern. It is a challenge that we have across the service as a whole. The vast majority of our workforce work a 4-day week and we deliver a 6-day service. That means you need 2 people to drive 1 machine for 6 days. So, there are pros and cons for that, but it does mean that you need more people to deliver that service. So I hope that satisfies the question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Crease.
Thank you, Chair. Like everyone else that's spoken already, I'm delighted to see that recommendation 2 has been removed and that the people have been listened to and concerns raised have been actioned. I'd just like to clarify that we're saying that no booking other than that which is already in, no booking system other than that which is in place is going to be added. So that's fabulous. And just an observation, after a rather long part of my life spent managing young people and adults in schools in very large numbers, I've always found that you need to make it easier for people to comply, not more difficult. And putting barriers to compliance is only going to increase difficulty going forward. So it's heartening to see that people are considering making it easier for people to comply rather than more difficult. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Crease. Councillor Dolphin.
Thank you very much, Chairman. What a muted meeting this has been. It became so positive after about a minute of this agenda item. We're discussing a problem that isn't there. It was removed immediately if we thought there was a problem. Let's have some positivity. Councillor Swash, I'd love to answer your questions, but we can't do it here. But I'm looking forward to doing it in another place at another time. And I support 3 bins. You know that before we get there, because it's not that hard. But positivity. There's something this council needs to talk about a bit more. And this is a positive subject today. Congratulations. And I've had many run-ins with street scene in the past over bin collections and recycling and all the rest of it. But one of the things they do really well is household recycling centres. Mainly, I talk about the Greenfield one because that's the local one in the west of Flintshire. And it is, you don't get any better than that. It's magnificent. And the men, they're dealing with rubbish, the staff, I should say, are dealing with rubbish all the day. But they're happy. And they greet you happily. And you go away happy because you've got rid of all your rubbish. And in the right place, it's recycled and being taken away. So really, we should go to the vote and accept what's in front of us now and be happy with that. And it's something this council needs to do a bit more. Be a bit more happy with what we're doing. And don't try and drag everything else down and look at all the problems that have already been removed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dolphin. I shall continue, though, with the speakers that have already indicated. Councillor Parkhurst.
Thank you, Chair, for that, and thank you to Katie and Chris for your report. I've got a few questions. Firstly, on page 20, there is reference to the tonnages at each site being reduced since the vehicle permit scheme was introduced. Has there been any reduction since the reduced opening times were reduced? I'm asking particularly because if there is, that could impact negatively on the achievement of Welsh Government's recycling targets. That's my first question. The next question is regarding the days in which the recycling centres are closed. There is obviously no recycling centre open on a Wednesday. I think we've talked before about the difficulties that presents people. Is there not an argument for having at least one recycling centre open, probably greenfield in view of it being the largest? Third question is there scope for a reduction in staff numbers? Anecdotally, I've received lots of comments about people saying they perceive the recycling centres to be overstaffed. So I think that's a question that needs to be looked at. Yeah, and that's it. Thank you.
In terms of the reduction in tonnage, because it's still a relatively new change, we haven't seen any significant changes yet, but we haven't had a full year of reporting as yet. We haven't seen any reduction in recyclable material at this point, and that is where the income is generated from. In terms of those closure days, as the report says, we took advice from various quarters, not least this committee here, about protecting certain days. So weekends were off the table in terms of closures. Mondays, because of the bank holiday, off the table, and Fridays. So we were kind of left with only 3 days to pick from to close 5 sites. Those maths only work in one way, which results in that Wednesday closure across the board. As I say, we did consult with as many people as we could, and this was the most agreeable solution that we came up with at that time. In terms of overstaffing, we did make significant changes to the way that we staff the recycling centres earlier on in the year, last year, and as it references in the report, we'd already done that piece of work in terms of reducing numbers and really getting it down to the bare bones. That meant that when the request came in August to find more savings, the only opportunity that we had was to either close one site or close on certain days. Nobody was of the opinion that closing one site would be a successful thing to attempt to do. I don't think we'd have got the political buy-in. I don't think we'd have got the public support. And it wouldn't really have generated a huge amount of savings when compared to what we've already done. Closing one site, you're only really effectively saving 3 people's wages. Whereas doing what we've done, we've been able to manufacture a little bit more of a saving from the workforce budget altogether. So I would counter that they're overstaffed. There is sometimes some confusion, particularly in Greenfield, because the transfer station is next door and the transfer station has dedicated staff that use the same welfare facility. So it might be that there are 5 people on site in Greenfield, but 2 of them are technically from the transfer station. So we have boiled it's probably a poor choice of word, but we have reduced the number of staff as far as is reasonably possible at this point, and safely, yeah.
Okay, happy with that, Councillor Parkhurst? Yeah. Okay, Councillor Attridge.
Thanks, Jens. Thanks for allowing me to make comments and ask a question. Just really for Chris, he mentioned that trade unions wouldn't allow members of staff to work a Saturday and Sunday. I find that very hard to believe, because there must be a 2-tier workforce in Flintshire, because I'm aware, especially in social care, where staff do work a Saturday and Sunday. So I'm just a bit curious why there's a different rules for street scene and different rules for social care. Also, I'd like to make comments on the new cabinet member, Councillor Chris Dolphin, where he said we should have something to celebrate here and be positive. Well, with the greatest of respect, cutting a service, cutting days off off our HRA sites, when the reason the amount of money was invested in our HRA sites were to give our residents a choice when they went to use the recycling centres we're pushing a lot on recycling. We're not meeting targets, but then we're not allowed, you know. So for me, I'd like to know what is the exact amount of say, because you opened up saying that it was part of a budget pressure. Can you tell us the exact amount of savings that you plan on making by cutting the reduced hours at the site? And the other question is, when you say the issue regarding the operators on site 4 or 5, what you say it gets done, it's for yourselves to manage, or what are the rules and regulations? Have they changed? Because when I used to attend quite often at Oak and Oats, I'd have 3 or 4 men, or 2 or 3 men, as soon as you open your boot, wanting to help. With my illness lately, I haven't been able to go, but my wife attends regular and other family members, and they say they just all stand around watching people. So as the opening hours, I appreciate you've changed them, but as the rules for people helping or everyone that comes on the site, or just county councillors when they attend? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. In terms of the budget saving realised, that figure's in the report. It's 216k between a 7-day and a 5-day service. So that's been realised specifically through a reduction in agency numbers, effectively, and a reduction in overtime. We've made significant reductions in particularly overtime within service delivery, and that is through necessity, but also through business improvement and continual improvement, and being able to deliver the service more effectively. So the saving that's been realised, and the money that's been taken from my budget is 216k. With reference to people helping on the sites, operatives are expected to help where they are requested to help. So whilst they may not necessarily offer help, they will always help if asked. There's a fine line between helping and interfering, and from a customer service perspective, we would always wait to be asked rather than insisting on helping. Not everybody is receptive to big burly men coming over and, you know, invading their personal space. So we always encourage staff to wait until they're asked for help, at which point they are more than happy to help. With regards to your question around the 2-tier workforce and the weekend working, that was a debate that went on for quite some time. And coming from a commercial background, I had quite strong views on what we should and shouldn't be able to ask people to do. The Green Book tells us that we can work 7 days a week till 11 o'clock at night, and so it was feasible that we could have people working Saturdays and Sundays. That's what our policy says. However, through consultation with the TUs and with our own HR colleagues, we were advised against it, purely for staff well-being. Equally, staff need 2 days off, and there is also that recruitment and retention issue as well that has to be addressed. We already have a problem with retention and recruitment for our Saturday shifts on the collections and other services, so we were strongly advised against it by the TUs and by HR colleagues. Thus, we landed where we are today. There are people in social services who do work Saturdays and Sundays. The vast majority of those tend to work part-time hours, so they will only be doing 3 days or 2 days a week. that is something that we are looking to explore as a service, to have more part-time workers, to change the demographic of our workforce, to encourage more young people, more students, single parents into the workforce. So that is something that we're exploring at the moment, so that we can facilitate that weekend working a little bit easier. You will find that the vast majority of people who work Saturdays and Sundays are on a part-time contract. So I hope that's addressed all your questions, Councillor Artridge.
Okay, thank you very much for addressing all of that. I'll just bring in the leader.
Thank you, Chair. In answer to Councillor Swash's questions, I haven't made any changes at all as regard to my views. I expect this council all to work together for the good of our residents. And as Councillor Dolphin said, we should be celebrating some of the successes we're having. And some of the committees that I've attended, where we're taking 3 and 4 hours over making a decision, appalls me. Officers have got far more things to do than to be arguing about things that go on for hour after hour after hour, when all it's needed is a decision that we can make and we can afford, because that is the way we want to be. No, would I like 3 weekly bin collections? No, I would leave it at 2, but we can't, because we can't afford it. So it's quite simple, really. All I ask is we work together in harmony about doing the best for our residents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. There's no further speakers, so I'll move to the recommendations that we have. Is that on page 19? Page 19, recommendation 1 is that we change the word welcomes to agree, and we remove recommendation 2. Can I have a mover? Councillor Crees, Councillor Lloyd seconded. Can I have a show of hands? All those in favour? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. We shall now move on to agenda item 6, which is the food service plan, and I shall bring in Chief Officer to introduce it.
Thanks, Chair. Just whilst Sean and Helen are taking their seats. Good morning, everybody. You've got 2 reports here from my portfolio. They're both on the way to Cabinet next week, so we'll welcome your views, questions, and hopefully endorsement of them. Picking up Councillor Dolphin's point, I think there are positive elements, so very positive elements to both of them. Around this time of year, when we're talking about budgets, there's often a lot of talk about statutory and discretionary services, and you'll see from these 2 reports that you've got one of each. The first one, which is about the food safety plan, is a statutory service. It's a statutory service that you don't see much about. They don't have a huge amount of visibility, but boy, do you need them if there's a problem. And we're really fortunate to have a really high performing food safety team, which Helen leads. So with no further ado, I'll hand over to Sean. Both these areas sit within Sean's area of my portfolio. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Andy, and Borada. Good morning, members. Please, you have to apologise. I am losing my voice a little bit, so please bear with me as well. Okay, then. So just by way of introduction to the report, then. So I'm sure that you will have noted that local authorities are required by the Food Standards Agency to have in place an approved food plan, which outlines how the service will take forward in this current financial year and also reflects on performance in the previous financial year. The plan that is before you today is consistent with the requirements of the FSA. It is presented a little bit later in the committee cycle that we would ordinarily take it, and that reflects the fact that we were subject to an external FSA audit back in the summer, which I'm pleased to report went very well, and the FSA were pleased with the progress that the service has made since the pandemic. But of course, I'm sure you'll understand, had the auditors picked up on any changes that would needed to have been made to the service and the operation of the service, then that would of course had to have been reflected in the plan itself. As part of the cover report, and of course included in the plan, there is reference to the performance of the food safety and food standards team. And hopefully you'll have noted that the highest risk areas, the food businesses who have the highest profile of risk, if you like, that the performance and the way that the team have targeted those inspections have, I guess, received priority, and that is reflected in the plan. Helen O'Loughlin, who is the team manager, is sat next to me. So we're very happy to take any questions that you have with respect to the food plan. Thank you. Diolch.
Okay, thank you very much, Sean. Does anybody indicating questions? It doesn't look like. It looks like. I thought you were getting off light then. Councillor Lloyd.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just pleased to see the audit by the Food Standards Agency Wales were pleased with the report. So I think that's an important point to note. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Dolphin.
The office is very positive. The very positive report, that's the word of the day, positivity and positive. I do have a question though, just 99% of Category C food hygiene inspections due were completed. The service dealt with 13 food incidents. The 13 food incidents, what type of incidents would they be? Food poisoning or what?
No, there's a variety of food. Sorry about that. So yeah, there's a diverse range of food incidents that we deal with. These can be from, there's a pollution incident on the Dee estuary or an outflow issue, and so we're needing to do something with that, versus one of our manufacturers had an issue where salmonella was detected in a food product that had been through their premises, but was actually detected in the local authorities area. They're diverse in range, and the amount of resource that takes to deal with them is equally quite far-ranging for us. We have a legal duty when there's an incident in our area that may affect the local authority areas. We have to report that to the Food Standards Agency also, as they have oversight to the incident.
Okay, thank you. So you echo the Chief Officer's opening remarks then. Oh boy, you need a good plan when you're in trouble.
That's right, yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other speakers? Questions? No. Okay, I thank you for the report. As I looked at it and read through it at the weekend, I thought this would go through quite easily, and it looks like it has. So thank you very much for that. And we'll move to the recommendation on page 27 to consider and endorse the Food Service Plan 24-25. Can I have a mover?
Move.
Councillor Lloyd, seconder.
Second.
Seconded, Councillor Pearce. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to agenda item 7, additional HMO licensing consultation. I shall hand over to the Chief Officer.
I'll go straight to Sean.
Oh, okay, I'll hand over to Sean.
Thank you very much. Okay then, so first of all, I should introduce the lady to my left. This is Marion Davis, who is the team manager for housing enforcement and also pollution control. I think many of the members around this table actually will have had correspondence or dialogue with Marion over the years, and yeah, she has an excellent team of officers behind her. Okay, so the purpose of this report is to seek the endorsement of members to progress to consult with the public and also key stakeholders on a new scheme to license smaller houses of multiple occupation, HMOs, in the county. I will flag up, as the Chief Officer has already sort of highlighted, this proposal is about introducing a discretionary scheme. to Flintshire. We were successful in terms of obtaining a budget pressure bid, which would help us resource the rollout of such a scheme. But we do need the starting point to this. It has to be with the consultation. Now, the service at the moment licenses larger HMOs, and they are required by statute. These come under a mandatory licensing regime. However, often the service is aware of smaller HMOs is when there is a concern raised. Might be by members, it might be by partners such as North Wales Police or the fire service, or indeed a complaint is lodged by the contract holder or tenant themselves. So in section 3.01, a list of whom we would propose to target as part of the consultation is outlined. I should say we would also include, I think, town and community councils, and we would be happy to take on any recommendations that you as members would want us to put forward as well. I think it's also it would also be remiss of me not to clarify as well point just in terms of the wording in point 302 regarding the types of HMOs that we're proposing should be covered. And it should read section A, any type of HMO defined by section 254 of the Housing Act, which, and this is the change, this is the bit that was missed, by 2 or more persons forming 2 or more households, and the rest of the section is correct. I mean, I guess the rationale behind seeking to introduce such a scheme is the desire to drive up levels of compliance in the private rented sector. And I think it's fair to say that this has been the experience of neighbouring authorities who have rolled out such a licensing regime. I think Flintshire probably are a little bit behind the curve, really, because we've seen this introduced in many areas very, very successfully, and we work very closely with colleagues from across North Wales and nationally as well, where this has been the case. It's also consistent with what we have in the council plan as well, in terms of the private rented sector and sort of addressing the need that we have in the county for improvement of standards, etc. So there you have it. That's the report. I would very much welcome any comments, and as we are at a point where we are only seeking endorsement at the moment, it's quite, our consultation strategy is quite fluid, so we can incorporate the views of members and any further recommendations. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Did you want to come?
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Sean. Just to point out a couple of points. We're proposing that the scheme would cover the whole of the county. There is a choice. You don't have to apply it to the whole of the county. You'll see that outlined in 104, but we'd suggest over the whole of the county. And I mean, this isn't just a private sector rental issue. To gain the information and that data would really help us if I'm wearing my planning hat as well. We quite often sit in planning committee with complaints about houses of multiple occupation. Hopefully this will improve their management, and it will also improve the amount of information that we've got, which will then form the basis of a defensible supplementary planning guidance note that would sit alongside the local development plan. At the moment, without the data, we can't produce a defensible document. So hopefully it will have a number of benefits to it. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much for that. A few speakers. Councillor Crease.
Thank you, Chair. It's heartening to see that this issue is being addressed. You touched on, when you were explaining about the people you would consult about town and community councils. I, like many other members, I sit on a town community council, and one of the largest issues for the town and community council I have at town council meetings are when we see planning notifications coming through for HMO after HMO after HMO, So any system whereby, first off, these properties are, the smaller HMOs are brought into a regime of control and licensing would be a positive thing for every resident in Flintshire, I'm certain. Secondly, the idea that Chief Officer Planning has said that if we gather the data, it then becomes possible, if there is supporting data, to look at supplementary planning conditions, which is something I think that would be welcomed by everyone involved. So I would wholeheartedly support this.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Mike Pearce.
Right, thank you, and thank you, Sean, for the report. Being a member of the planning committee, we are familiar with HMOs, and as this document is planned to go out for public consultation, would it be useful to have a definition at the very start to explain what a HMO is? I think that might be useful. And in the report itself, under 106, it states that before making a designation, the authority must A, take reasonable steps to consult persons who are likely to be affected by the designation. How will you identify who will be affected by the designation, and who are they likely to be? In 301 second paragraph, that's after the list of bullet points, it says this data can be used to target those who have properties registered in Flintshire. Do we need to put in HMO properties registered in Flintshire, because certain areas in the report are talking about the private sector, private rented sector? So I think HMOs would clarify that particular area. And finally, in 303, yeah, so this will be additional licensing across the county, and obviously this would impact on office time, workload, and impact resources. Are we prepared for this at the moment, or will this come at a later date? Thank you.
Okay, I'll bring Sean in.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pearce. Just with respect to the questions, in terms of those affected, I mean, clearly those who will be affected will be, one of the largest group, I guess, will be landlords themselves, and the database held by Rent Smart Wales would be a starting point there. But also by sort of widening the approach to consultation, it also helps in terms of getting that sort of community intelligence as well. So contract holders and tenants, they are contract holders now, sorry, but contract holders themselves would be key as well, to, again, hence the reason why you would want to sort of to make it, you wouldn't just want to target it, you would want a blanket approach to try and sort of to engage with as many people as you possibly can. In terms of how we would approach the consultation, you're absolutely right. I think we would take advice from colleagues in our communications department in terms of how the consultation would be led, and also in terms of the nature of the language that we use. So absolutely, you have to sort of to make it as clear as possible. I was struck by what Councillor Crease actually said in an earlier item about sort of ensuring that the language is as straightforward as possible, because that in itself helps compliance and understanding in the long term. And I think that's sort of that's a very important point, I think. Your question around officer resourcing is very relevant, and I make reference in the report to a successful budget pressure bid. We did put in for budget pressure bid for additional officers to undertake this work. If I tell you that Marion's team are stretched at the moment, it's a high demand, high volume service, as I'm sure many of you will be aware. So we couldn't roll this out without additional resource, because when you set up a licensing, this is a discretionary licensing scheme for the authority, but once you've set it up and once it's been adopted, then there are timescales that you have to meet, that you have to be hitting, and we wouldn't be able to do it within sort of the current structure. So hence the reason why there would need to be additional resourcing to do it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Pearce, happy with that response?
Yes, thank you for the responses. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. I think you're right, Sean. I think Flintshire are a bit behind in introducing this scheme. I had a property in Bangor, but obviously that was a student area, so that was introduced. It wasn't a HMO when I bought the property, but years went down the line, and probably more than 10 years ago, they introduced the additional licensing scheme, where you had to have fire doors. There's lots of, they did actually get a grant for some of them. I'm not suggesting that you're going to provide a grant at the moment, but I did get grants for fire doors and things. It's something that needs doing. Rent Smart Wales are a vital contact really to find out. A lot of people aren't registered to renting property, and they're not registered to rent Smart Wales. I come across that every time. With my planning hat on as well, we've been asking for this for a very long time, of planning, for the additional supplementing conditions for HMOs. Every time one comes up, we're dreading it really. We always have a difficult decision. The local member always objects to it. But at the moment, we have no obligation. We have no reasons really why we can't refuse these applications. So the additional supplementing conditions would be very handy. So, but I don't envy you finding out where all these additional HMOs are. That's going to be quite a task. So good luck with that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Parkhurst.
Thank you, Chair. Like others, I welcome this measure to further improve the regulation of private landlords. Can I ask the Chief Officer, please, what is the progress with the rogue landlord scheme as passed by a resolution of council, and whether he feels these two measures should be introduced in tandem? Thank you.
Well, work's already progressing on the rogue landlord one. We've worked up the website, and that's been shared, I think, with the two members who proposed that as a notice of motion. So I wouldn't say wait. That work's already going. They can run
Yeah, Councillor Parkhurst, if you're happy just to sort of take some supplementary information there. So as Andy has sort of indicated, the rogue landlord, particularly the reporting element of the rogue landlord tool, I would foresee that coming in. I would certainly hope before this comes in. So I would echo those sentiments that we shouldn't wait for that to sort of to be rolled out. We've fed in the information that we would require. We've also met with the two members who proposed the notice of motion. We're meeting with them again as well in terms of giving a further update. So it is down to sort of the IT side of things now. So I would hope that that'll be done way before this comes into force.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Attridge.
Thanks, Chairman, and thanks for allowing me to ask a question. Mine's question is, although a very, very welcome scheme, but we've been here before. It was a budget bid. I know myself and others tried to get it included within the budget. That's rejected. So I know the leader of the council's here now. Can he confirm now that we will be going ahead now with this budget pressure, or the budget bid that was put in? You've heard sort of committee members. You've heard, you know, it's continuously raised in planning committee because at the end of the day, it's okay scrutinising a report. You know, if everyone, you know, is saying it's a wonderful report, you know, it needs acting on. So, you know, could we have the assurances through the leader of the council that additional resource is going to be found for these points? Because if he says no money can be found for them, well, what's really the point of discussing it? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Attridge. On page 74, item 4, it says budget has been allocated to recruit new officers to implement this scheme. So I presume that is still the case.
Councillor Attridge, that is still the case. The budget has been allocated for it, and I want to see this going ahead anyway. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Nobody else is indicating to speak, so move to the recommendations on page 71. To consider and endorse the commencement of a formal consultation and to eventually to receive the outcome of the consultation exercise when it's been completed. So can I have a mover? Councillor Crease, a seconder, Councillor Lloyd. Have a show of hands, all those in favour. Clearly carried. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, members. We move on to agenda item 8, review of highway asset management plan and highway and car park inspection policy. I'll hand over to the Chief Officer.
Thank you very much, Chair. Ordinarily, Barry Wilkinson, the Highway Network Manager, would be here today, but he's unable to be here today. So I'll be taking you through the report, but Chris is also here to support in terms of any questions afterwards. So purpose of the report is to provide an update on the Highway Asset Management Plan. Highway assets covers a range of things. So it's the road network, so what we call carriageways, footways, street lighting, all the street furniture that you see, traffic signals and the like. It also includes our drainage infrastructure as well. So it's very wide ranging, and I appreciate this is quite a hefty report for members to get through today as well. But I'll try and summarise it as best I can. So we've committed to reviewing what we call HAMP, so I'll abbreviate it, so the Highway Asset Management Plan, every 5 to 7 years. We last reviewed it in 2021, and we had a previous policy change in 2018. So this report explains how we intend to report on these key assets going forward, and also our progress against the improvement plan over that period. And what we're looking to do, so if I can just explain to members really how the structure works in terms of the HAMP. So HAMP is our overall strategy. Beneath that, we will have a number of different policies that will sit underneath that. And then what we intend to do on an annual basis is bring annual status reports on the conditions of the assets to members each year. And that will then progress it'll measure our performance, it'll progress in terms of the condition of that asset and any risks as well. So that's in summary, how we intend to do that. So taking you through the report, so it's an asset worth over 1.2 billion, and that's just for the carriageways and footways alone. We have a statutory duty to maintain all adopted highways, including structures. I didn't mention structures, so bridges as well, culverts are part of the assets as well. Over the last 10 years, we've seen a significant reduction in budgets, and we now have a very, very limited budget available each year to maintain the highway carriage alone. We've identified within the reports that in order to maintain the current condition of the highway, that's without improvements, just the current condition in a steady state, we need 3.92 million. We don't have that, unfortunately. So, it's been a diminishing budget year on year. We previously had access to Welsh Government grants, but 2 years ago they were removed completely. They did help, but again, even with those grants, it didn't address the maintenance of the highway asset in terms of that steady state. We also have a limited staff resource in terms of maintaining that asset, and increased expectations from both the public and from members in terms of how we maintain that asset. We also have ageing network and infrastructure, and we have a significant backlog of maintenance requirements. So we need a more strategic approach to optimise the limited funding and resources that we have available. Without sufficient annual investment, the overall condition of the network will continue to deteriorate. So this is a worsening position, unfortunately. We currently only have £1.5 million worth of capital funding, and that's not guaranteed year on year. We have to bid in for that funding every single year. And we have £225,000 worth of revenue funding. So you can see how significant the gap is for us in terms of being able to maintain those assets. The majority of the funding that we do have in terms of that 1.5 million goes towards the road network and carriageways. We have we set aside about 500k of that 1.5 million for structures, because we have a statutory duty to inspect and maintain structures of bridges like Flintshire Bridge and all the other bridges. So we do allocate some to structures. This means then we've only got a minimal amount of funding for other assets, so things like traffic signals, footways, street furniture, and we tend to only use that to address any sort of emergency or critical issues. So we have no funding to be able to actually, completely resurface or treat those assets, unfortunately. In the review, we've been supported by EXP Consulting, and this is via the County Surveyors Society for Wales, who they specialise in roads and highway asset management advice and training across the whole of Wales. And that's a free resource to us that's made available via Welsh Government and CSSW. They're the experts in their field. They've reviewed all of our data, which has helped us in terms of reviewing our approach and taking a more strategic approach to the management of the highway asset. In 1.12 on page 80, the three main issues that they've addressed in terms of the HAMP, they've identified and agree with us, yes, you've got a significant backlog of deferred maintenance, and that we need to acknowledge that. And we need to work towards its resolution. We can't ignore it. Even if we threw all the funds that we had, available, and we did have that 3.92 million now, it still would be impractical to implement it in the short term. So we'd need to take a longer term approach. The second item that they've identified is that we have competing demands for resources as well. So we need to have more informed decision making in terms of how we approach it. And this is why we want to start using annual status reports on the conditions of each asset and actually be data driven. So that's what we intend to do as part of the change. The third one is the highway inspection policy, and we are proposing in this report some refinements to the policy and revision of the inspection regimes. And this will then form part of our action plan going forward. We are adjusting some of the remediation times and bringing them in line with other Welsh authorities and also the codes of practice, which will help us then in terms of reprioritisation of funding through an annual programme of works across all of the asset groups, rather than us just focusing solely on things like A roads and B roads. It means we can then look at wider assets as well. The other major change is around the inspection policy. We are proposing that becomes a maintenance manual. So what we want to do is, subject to approval, we'd like to adopt that maintenance manual straight away. And we don't want to wait till the next financial year. That's something we would like to implement straight away. This then would, and that's certainly a recommendation that's been made by EXP Consulting as well. That will then allow us then to prioritise any schemes that we want to bid for next year, for 25-26, and identify those schemes. So there's quite a lot of work following the approval of this report between now and April as well. 1.17 on page 81 sets out the outcome of the review. So there's quite a number of points under that in their findings. They've compared, they've benchmarked us essentially against all the other local authorities in Wales and compared us against their various codes of practice as well that are in place across the UK. In some cases, we're over generous in terms of our policy for inspections, but in other cases, we're falling short as well. So the changes that we're proposing will bring us in line with all the other local authorities across Wales, but also in terms of codes of practice as well and standardising that approach. I think one thing to point out and bring to your attention is, you know, we're not complying with our policy now. You know, I'm going to hold my hands up. We're failing. You know, our completion rates of repairs is low, and you know, I think we've highlighted it in the report that only 25% of defects are actually repaired within the specified response time over the last 3 years. So we're not, because we, you know, the policy that we have in place at the moment, we're not meeting it. We've got no chance of actually keeping up with it because of the huge backlog at the moment. I think the other key point that members need to be aware of as well, because of the low level of repair rates and compliance, we have a weakened defence then when it comes to third-party claims. We just cannot defend those claims, so it doesn't help us. So some of what we're doing here is to help us mitigate against that, you know, those third-party claims and changing that. If approved and once adopted, there'll be a huge training programme for us to go through with the inspectors, the area coordinators and our supervisors, and we propose to do that through EXP Consulting again. There'll be no cost to us for doing that, but they've agreed to do that training programme, and we've highlighted, I think, in 1.17 some of the deficiencies that they've found already in terms of how we approach it at the moment. We have included some annual status reports so you can get a flavour and an idea for what those might look like on an ongoing basis. So there's one for carriageways, there's one for footways, and there's one for structures in the appendices. So that gives you an idea of, you know, so you can see the kinds of data you'll be given in future. And the proposal is every asset will have an annual report to Scrutiny, so it'll be an ongoing, potentially we'll be back here every single month with one of those assets on an ongoing basis. But it helps, you know, we're not doing it at the moment. We're not being data driven. We're not giving you the evidence. So we want to do that going forward. So it changes our approach completely. I think I've summarised that mostly. Just one other point, 1.24, there's a very useful diagram which explains how the highway asset management plan and strategy sits in terms of in relation to other council plans and policies. It will also feed into the regional transport plan. So we have a report coming to you later in the year on the regional transport plan as well. So it helps you to see how that fits into the bigger picture. I think hopefully I've summarised it in enough detail for you and open to any questions.
Thank you very much for that. Just before I open up to questions, I hope I'm not the only one that found this quite a hard, difficult report to read through. And I did suggest to the Chief Officer before the meeting that it might be useful for this committee or members of this committee to go on a training or education of this maybe in the new year, so that we can have a better understanding, because there was a lot of information in here, and I struggled reading through this. So if there's the will to do that, then obviously we can maybe ask the Chief Officer, getting nods of heads off people. So okay, we'll leave that with the Chief Officer to try and arrange something. Okay, Councillor Pearce.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was a big report. Might be better in the future to sort of trim some of these down, or maybe break them up so we can look at them over a number of meetings. Yeah, thank you for the report, Katie. In section 112 on page 80, it talks about a significant backlog of deferred maintenance. So this maintenance work that's been deliberately put off for another day, and it's not being done, and it's all accumulated. So now we have a big problem. There don't seem to be any timescales to fix this, so it's open-ended, so it can only get bigger, I would imagine. On page 82, Roman numeral 11, talks about maintenance defects. Are we talking about such things as potholes, that type of thing? And on the same page, X number 3, I was inspired by Councillor Dolphin's call for positivity, but when I saw X111, my positivity rush was cut short, because we can see here that, I know you did mention it, Katie, but we can't let it pass without discussing it. Compliance in completing repairs is low, less than 25%. So can we have a program to improve this? You know, I've really got nothing else to say on that, apart from, you know, it doesn't look good. Sorry to say that, but those are the facts before us. On page 93, the HAMP review date. Now that's coming up as 2026. That's 2 years' time. Would you not want to do an annual review on this? It's just a question. I don't know what the reason is, but 2 years from implementation over a 5-year plan doesn't seem to be, you know, doesn't seem to be right. I don't know. But on page 99, we have a defects table. Sorry about the noise in the background. I'm at home today because there's work going on. Page 99, the table talks about defects and maintenance defects, and high priority is a month. Yeah, high priority is a month. So I'm just wondering what's low priority. I think some of these dates, you know, maintenance defects brackets high priority in a month, and, you know, maintenance defects medium priority 3 months, low priority. You know, it might be in line with the deferred maintenance that's going on. If I go into page 100, I really want you to do a word change on this one, please. On the patching, it says in the second sentence, smaller areas tend to be located on roads which are generally good condition, which may not be considered for planned treatments for many years. Now, that doesn't give people like me much hope, because I have an area of road that's constantly being patched, and it does look like a quilt. Yeah, there's different colours, there's different textures, and it's in need of being done. And I've been assured by the area coordinator it'll be done next year. But when I see patching which may not be considered for many years, it sort of deflates me slightly. So could we change the word from many years to the immediate future? It does offer some hope. It does offer some hope that we may get that. But I think if we can change the wording on that. And I want to come on to 105, which is a street lighting. I have reported probably within the last 6 months that we have a concrete post, and concrete posts, very old concrete posts, could be considered quite dangerous, because the one I'm referring to, which was reported, what happens is the steel reinforcing within the concrete, once it gets wet, it expands, it blows the concrete off, and the rusting is being exposed. Now, I've been told that's okay. Now, I'm not convinced it's been tested. It may be done on a visual. So I'm just wondering whether we should have, you know, a planned maintenance for the steel posts and one for the concrete posts. When it talks about doing 160 over the life of the plan, you know, changing lampposts, lamp columns, that's less than one a week. Yeah, maybe a resource issue, I don't know, but one a week doesn't seem to be a long time. So I think, yeah, and I think I think this run right out to page 216. I did actually go through the report, but on just bear with me because I've got to scroll up the page. It's as you say, the report's so big. I've got to just scroll up, and I'm on page 216. Just bear with me. So like, yeah, we do need to break down these reports, Chair. They are quite big. Right, 216. I think it was the statistics on page 216. Yeah, this was it. On page, you probably haven't scrolled 216 because it might take you a while to get there. But on page 216 on the works, it says, based on the last 11 years, an average road gets a new surface every 72 years. Okay. Based on the last 5 years, on average, each unclassified road can expect to be resurfaced once every 131 years. I just wonder what the value of this information is. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, is that it, Councillor Pearce?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, thank you. I'll bring the Chief Officer in.
Thank you. There's quite a number of points raised there, so and I appreciate it as a hefty report, but yeah, absolutely take on board the suggestion for
Big report, lots of questions.
Yeah, it's fine. I may have to ask you to repeat some questions, but I'll hopefully I've captured them all. But yeah, I think it would be valuable to have some sort of training session for scrutiny members, definitely. I think if I can just jump ahead, you mentioned the HAMP review in 2026, and I think the intention is to break this down so each asset would come to you. So every month you'd have a report, on one of these assets that contained within this report. So we wouldn't, it would be coming to you annually because, 1 month we might be reporting on street lighting columns, the next month it might be traffic signals, the next month it might be footways. So there'll be an asset probably every single month. So you'll get an annual status report on each one rather than us bring them all at once, which is a lot of information. So over time, it would start to spread out. But obviously we had to start somewhere, hence why this report's so big. You referred to the deferred maintenance and backlog, and we fully acknowledge that. We are not going to, it is a deteriorating situation. The problem is only going to get worse, unfortunately, but we have to try, we have to try and address it and put something in place. It's not ideal, but without the funding and investment, we can't. I've mentioned to you, we've only got £1.5 million worth of capital funding and £225,000 worth of revenue funding, and it's nowhere near enough just to maintain it in a steady state. So that's without, we'd need additional funding on top of that to make improvements. We tend to rely on grant funding, through things like active travel funding or road safety schemes, to do those improvements. So without that investment, we're not going to see that. I think, picking up, your last comment about the value of that information on that page 216, and that just shows you the scale of the problem. It gives you a bit of context, and just shows you how deficient the funding is. There's been a lack of investment and lack of funding over the last 10 to 12 years, which has caused the problem in terms of this backlog that we have now. I completely acknowledge that, is why we've included it, that we're failing to achieve our current policy and targets. That's why we're proposing the changes, which it will help us. It'll bring us in line in terms of the other local authorities and help improve our performance. You asked about the maintenance defects on page 82, and they're not just potholes, they could be any safety defect. So again, there'll be a training programme with the area coordinators to identify what those are at the moment. And, when you look at other councils across Wales, they actually specify things like, what type of defect is it? How big is it? What's the depth of that defect? where is it? So we don't go into that level of detail now with our current inspection policy. So we will be doing that, and you can see that from the appendices in terms of the images that were included for different types. We obviously, you mentioned page 99 around high priority being a month, medium 3 months, and low is those sort of miscellaneous highway miscellaneous things. So there might be a missing railing, or it might not actually be a defect, but it needs, it could be a road sign, a nameplate that's missing. Those are those sort of low priority things that they would unfortunately be put to the back burner. It's got the safety critical things that will need to be done immediately within 2 hours. The high priority things will be within a month, medium 3 months. But those low things that just it could be anything that's just not seen as essential. But yeah, it could be a nice to do thing. So those are the sorts of things we mean. In terms of changing the wording about patching, I can't do that, unfortunately, without additional funding. So, some areas may not be patched for many years. Without funding, we can't do it. So that's unfortunately not within my gift to change, sadly. The street lighting concrete post, I'll take that offline, and I'll ask Daryl Jones to provide commentary separately outside on that specific concrete post, if that's okay. Again, I think you referred to the 160 equates to 1 per week. Yeah, it does. That's all the funding we've got. So, and again, it's not guaranteed. We have to bid for that funding every year. But we have to try and address the backlog in some way. So.
Okay, Councillor Pearce, did we miss anything?
No, very, very good. I just want to talk about the concrete lamppost. Daryl has actually been to see that lamppost. His views it's okay, but as I say, I don't know whether it's being actually tested. But if I can just come back to Katie on most of the things I've raised, it can't be done because we don't have the funds, we don't have the grants. Well, if the work isn't being done, do we need the resource? Yeah. If the work's not being done, do we need the resources there to do that work? I'll leave it at that, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
As I mentioned at the start of the report, we have a statutory duty to repair and maintain any safety critical issues within the highway. So yes, we still have a duty to do those things. So we will continue to do those things.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chief Officer, for your report and for the frankness in which you've introduced it. A lot of it clearly comes down to money, to grants and other funding. We all know that Flintshire has been shortchanged for many years, and this report just highlights the desperate situation we're in. Can I please recommend that we add another recommendation to the list of recommendations, that the leader writes to the First Minister, highlighting that the lack of funding is causing serious harm to our network of roads, and the impact that has on residents, and the additional liabilities that imposes on councils when accidents happen. So I would like to propose that the leader does write to the First Minister highlighting that. Thank you.
Just bring in the leader first.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I can assure you that I spoke to Hannah Blythen last night, talking about she's got a meeting with Mark Drakeford today about budgets and whatever. And I'm going to have a meeting with all our AMs and our MPs. I'm trying to arrange it for a week on Friday and get them in to talk to us exactly how they propose to help us get out of this problem. And I explained one of the problems with the Barnett formula, whilst we may not be able to change the Barnett formula, but what we can put forward is when we're trying to compete in social services with areas alongside us, the likes of the Wirral or Cheshire or whatever, that the funds that the wages they're paying to our care workers compared to what we're paying is a major problem. So yes, I am on board with it, and yes, we do need to get them working with us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just your recommendation is not exclusive to this item, but to many things across the council. But obviously, if you made the recommendation, do you have a seconder for it, Councillor Creese? Sorry, somebody just speaking now. Okay, so Councillor Creese has seconded it. I'll continue with the speakers if you don't mind for the moment. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. I do appreciate you allowing me to speak. My question is, I have a particular road, I have many roads, but one particularly, Elvid Drive, which has had no work on it for the 20 years that I've been a county councillor, because I'm told it doesn't meet the matrix requirements. I was wondering, please, if we could have a refresh what the matrix requirements are currently. Because the road, I would say, is around 40 years old. So then I'm quite appalled to think it could be like not in my lifetime before it actually gets any work done on it. It is in quite a bad state, and I'm just about to actually write once again to my area coordinator to highlight the fact. He's very well aware of it. But yeah, I was just wondering, and I was wondering as well about contacting Welsh Government, because I think Katie said that we've been only on 25%, did she say, for 3 years, or did I mishear? Because I've lost my report on my iPad currently. If it's 25 years, surely we should have been onto Welsh Government well before now, saying that we're unable to meet our statutory requirements. And I make reference to Dobbs Hill roundabout. I think every councillor on this authority sent an email at one time, because of course it's the way that a lot of people get to work from this area to Airbus. It's actually been partly resurfaced now, but that took an awful long time, and an awful lot of reports of damage to tyres and suspension. And surely that's an additional cost to this authority. Again, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. I'll bring in the Chief Officer.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, again, I think you've hit the nail on the head, Councillor Ellis, that, you know, the whole purpose of this report is to revise our approach, and, you know, where we've concentrated the funding on, you know, those A's and B roads. Those roads, like you just mentioned, don't get any attention. So the change in approach will mean that we can carry out programmed repairs. It may not mean resurfacing the whole road, but it may mean more patching programs. That's what we're looking at. What we're trying to do is look at making our money go further, essentially. So we only get the £1.5 million, and of which only about 900,000 of that goes actually on resurfacing carriageways. So what we're trying to do is make that go further. So at the moment, it only allows us to resurface a handful of roads. In the future, it means we can then do vaster patching programs of certain roads. And you've hit the nail on the head. We are actually, the purpose of this report is to revise that matrix to enable us to do that. Without additional funding being thrown at us, we're never going to reach those roads, unfortunately. But what we're trying to do is make sure that we do. So that is the purpose of this report. So I think you've hit the nail on the head there. So hopefully, Councillor Ellis, we will be coming back to you with some good news in the future if this is adopted.
If I might just make one point as well, one of the big advantages of this change is, and particularly to address Councillor Pear's comments on resources, delivering the work in this way means that we can do much more of it in-house rather than putting money in the pockets of contractors who do our large resurfacing work. So it does mean that we get more control. We've got more control over the price, the quality of work, and it means that we keep our existing employees and teams in place as well. So I think that's an important point.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Councillor Crease.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to reiterate what Councillor Parker said, that, you know, I have to congratulate you on bringing out from under the bed an issue that faces every portfolio, and we seem reluctant to discuss that. As a council, we're underfunded. As a council, we're trying to deliver for the best of our residents and can't, simply because the cash inflows don't match what we have to do. I hope other portfolios will be as brave as you have been, coming forward with information that says you're underperforming to such an extent, but providing an explanation which clearly lays out where the fault lies. And the fault lies in the way we've been funded as a council for the last 10 to 15 years. There is no easy solution to it. There is no way we can find the sums of money involved to repair the roads in Flintshire and bring them all up to an acceptable, or a standard residents would find acceptable. We have to find solutions, but we need help. And it's down to the leader to go and seek that help. We cannot put this pressure on residents. We have to get support from Cardiff, and we have to get support from Westminster. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Crease. Councillor Swash.
Thanks, Chair. I fully support the recommendation moved by Councillor Parker, and I'm happy to second it if it hasn't already been seconded. And I'd suggest maybe that we, in that letter, make reference to the fact that a couple of months ago now, the Cabinet Secretary for Transport North Wales, Ken Skates, did make a commitment in the Senedd that he would look into further devolving highway funding to local authorities, so that local authorities like Flintshire would have more choice over how they spend the money they're given. So they wouldn't, not necessarily just be granted a pot of money that's specifically for active travel. The council would have the choice where it spends that money. So we might want to reference that and ask for an update on where they're up to with that. And also potentially reference, I think the UK government made a commitment in the general election, the UK Labour Party, but now government made a commitment to invest, I think it was hundreds of millions into specifically highway repairs and potholes.
To the order, Chair. Oh, these are questions for full council, surely. They're not for a scrutiny committee. It just doesn't seem an appropriate time to put these questions into the league.
Councillor Lloyd, it's not a question.
Okay,
it's a suggestion for things that go into the
Thank you. Can
letter.
Councillor Swash, can we not speak over the chair, please? Can I just ask that you make your statement and then we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm a bit perplexed by the point of order. I'm making suggestions for what would go into the letter that has been moved by Councillor Parkhurst to go to the First Minister, and I thought I was making helpful suggestions in terms of, potentially getting more choice over the money that's given to Flintshire in terms of highways, and potentially, investigating when we might get some consequentials for highway funding from any decisions by UK government. I would have thought that was fairly uncontroversial.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Swash. Councillor Dolphin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, this has been a good reality check for people in this room, the councillors and anybody watching. And let's hope the Welsh Government ministers have a look at this video. And where's our money? And where's it been for the last 20 plus years? Been on the council for 20 years and we've been getting poorer every year and budgets become tighter every year. So a real positive from today is that we understand we've got a massive problem with budget. We understand that, all of us, without a doubt. It's been presented, we've got a very positive report that's given us all the information, which is nearly all negative. So we're in real trouble with highways, potholes, patching, resurfacing, doing something once every 131 years. It's not on. The people need to know this. So if the press are listening, get that word out there as well. Give them the facts of this report. It's not our fault. It's not the council's fault. We don't really know whose fault it is. So we're not in a blame game in that respect. But where's the money? We need something to change, because it won't be just this authority. It won't be just a road up in Buckley or a road in the west of Flintshire. It's going to be all over Wales and all over the UK. I imagine there's lots of authorities probably worse than we are, but we in Wales are certainly one of the bottom 3 poorly funded counties and have been for, well, all the time of the Barnett formula, which was out of date in the 1990s. That formula was supposed to come in for 2 or 3 years and then go. Of course, consecutive governments have never done anything about it. And hence, here we are today. Our poor chief officer and the street scene operations manager, they're all wringing their hands on what are we going to do, but we've got to tell the people how bad it is. So let's tell the people how bad it is, and it's down to budget. If you haven't got a pothole filled in, or you've got a poorly surfaced road, and it hasn't been repaired for 50 years, and I can quote them in my ward, they've never been touched for 50 years, there's a reason for it, and it's because there's no money. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Leader.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst writing to the Welsh Government, I hardly think that will make any difference. All they do is put it in the bin. The way forward, the way that I see it, we get the AMs in and we get the MPs in and we talk to them and tell them exactly what they're expecting us to do or what we're expecting them to do. Like I spoke to Hannah Blythe and they said it's all right having 36 new AMs. Well, what's that going to do? Bring us more legislation? How do you think we're going to actually deliver it? And I think by bringing them in and telling them exactly the way we are, it's up to them then to take it forward for us, because they'll get more chance than just sending a letter. But that's what I am going to do, and I will write a letter if that's what they want. And I would ask Councillor Parkhurst and Councillor Swash if they want to contribute to that. Send in to me what you would like me to ask, and I'll ask it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think this has been very well aired. I appreciate Councillor Ibbetson's online now, but I'm going to go to Councillor Parkhurst so we can get the wording of the recommendation that you want adding, and then so Margaret can make sure that that's documented correctly, and then we'll move that to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to recommend that the leader writes to the First Minister highlighting the difficulties in this council meeting its statutory obligations by the inadequate level of funding from Welsh Government.
Councillor Creese, you're happy with that as seconder? Okay, I'm not going to take any more speakers on this, so I'm going to move that to the vote of the recommendations that are on page 77 and 78. There's 4 of them, plus the addition of what Councillor Parkhurst has just said. Can I have a show of hands of those in favour? Okay, that's clearly carried. Okay, 1 abstention. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much for that. We have a very short time before we would normally take for a break. It depends on agenda item 9. How quickly do you think we can get through it? So I'll hand over to the Chief Officer to discuss update on the bus network grant and local bus services in Flintshire.
Thank you, Chair. I'm hoping that my colleague Helen Telford, who's the Integrated Transport Unit Manager, is she there? I can't see
I'm
you
here.
on the screen.
I'm
yeah,
here.
there she is. So I introduced Helen is our Integrated Transport Unit Manager. So Helen has only just been appointed into the role. She was acting in the role on an interim basis after Kerry left, but Helen has now been appointed and be taking up that role imminently, or already has. So I'd like to introduce Helen to members as well. I'll quickly introduce the report, then I'll hand over Helen to talk through the detail. But we brought a report to this committee back in March, and purpose of that report was to update you on the bus network grants. And the bus network grant was the grant that replaced, I'll get this right, Helen, the bus transition fund, which was put in place to help operators after the pandemic, when if you remember, the passenger numbers nosedived. So it was put in place for all those bus operators across the whole of Wales. So that grant funding has continued, but albeit in a different format. So this is the new grant that was introduced in April. Flintshire actually is the host authority through which the grant is administered to all the operators as well, which is something that members may not be aware of, but we act as the banking facility almost, and we distribute that grant to all the operators and also to the local authorities across North Wales. So purpose of this report really is to provide you with an update on that particular grant and where we are in terms of meeting our budget requirements. We do have some shortfalls and pressures, unfortunately, both in year and also building for next year. As this grant is a capped grant, it's not an endless bottomless pit that we can keep delving into. Unfortunately, the Welsh Government have capped it. So it means that we've had to then cut down what we allocate across North Wales to all the local authorities and bus operators, but also to ourselves as well. So there is a shortfall of 270k for our local bus service subsidies, and Helen will go into the reasons behind that. And then there's a further 47k in terms of the regional shortfall for the bus network grant. So I'll hand over to Helen now, and then I'll step back in for questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you. I might just repeat a little bit of what you said there, but yeah, so the report was brought to scrutiny in March to update on the bus network grant. And it was to procure commercially non-viable bus services. And it was also to support local authorities when reprocuring our local buses for the increase in costs that brought about as well. So whilst it was anticipated that there would be significant changes to the commercial network as a result of inadequate funding, thankfully only minor changes are now required. So the region does have an allocation of 5.6 million for this financial year, which was to procure the commercially non-viable services. And there is a regional shortfall of 187,000. Of this, Flintshire is required to make a £47,000 saving for this year. So options that are outlined in this report have changed slightly since the writing of the report, mainly due to the fact that Arriva have got some concerns about depot risks, and they have requested that they be given the opportunity to provide those in-year savings through a review of the services, particularly the X4. And so therefore this report, we are requesting that option is taken forward, and that Arriva allow us the option that Arriva are allowed the opportunity to make those savings for the bus network grant shortfall. So as Katie mentioned, there's also savings required within our own local bus budget. So in March this year, we reprocured our local bus services, which did see an increase in pressures of £270,000. So whilst we've been able to mitigate those pressures for this year, it is essential that the recurring pressure is addressed more sustainably in the future in order to safeguard other services. So we would like to seek the approval to terminate the Service 5 at the Deeside Industrial Park. So when reprocured, the Service 5, which is the Mold to Ellesmere Port service, the contract cost rose at around £9,000 per month. We have been able to seek this funding from the bus network grant for this year, but this is obviously under pressure as well. So the current recharge to Cheshire West and Cheshire and Chester is minimal, and initial discussions with them have indicated that the increase in contribution is unlikely to be deemed cost effective given the limited passenger numbers within Cheshire. So we completed a test the market tendering exercise to obtain some potential savings. And by terminating the service at the DIP rather than in Ellesmere Port, it has attracted wider interest from local bus operators. So cost savings have the potential to be in the region of £160,000 to £200,000 per year, which would be a more frequent service of an hour rather than current 75 minutes. So although it is not been possible to complete an impact assessment at this time, the suggestions put forward for the X4 and the Service 5 will have the minimal impact on passenger numbers. And the only impact on for passengers for the 5 will actually be Cheshire residents rather than any Flintshire residents, and it should see an improvement. So to recap, we are requesting approval for Arriva to make the necessary amendments to the X4 to reduce the in-year shortfall on the bus network grant, and approval to move forward with the termination of the Service 5 at the DIP. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Just before speakers, so where the recommendation is to support the options within the report, there are several options under 105 and an option to terminate Service 5 at reference 108. But you've just mentioned that we're just dealing with 108, the option to terminate Service 5 and the X4. So what about the F10 and F11 that you've mentioned?
Well, the essentially the changes that Arriva are able to put forward mean that those will not be required.
Okay, thank you. Any members' question? Councillor Parkhurst.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have to confess to being really puzzled by this report. I'm not sure we've got the information that we really need. You know, for example, the first option to reduce the X4 mould to Chester Business Park service to 1 bus. This contract, it says, costs £349,000 a year. I'm amazed that a bus route from 2 principal, towns and cities is requiring a subsidy of that massive amount. Is the council being taken for a ride on this? I mean, I just found it astounding. Do we have passenger numbers? Do we have the actual sort of figures on the costs and the income from the bus company to make a judgment on this? It just doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Thank you, Katie.
Yeah, if I could just clarify, this is a follow-up report from a previous report where the detail would have been provided. Admittedly, maybe that should have been included in the appendices so you could see what was presented previously. But it may be that you weren't at that meeting at that time. So I think what Helen is saying, though, that all the options under 1.05 are now they're no longer being proposed, because what's happened in the intervening time between us writing this report and then actually for it to come to this committee meeting is Arriva have obviously been negotiating in the background and have come forward with their own proposals. So we're not actually proposing any of those options in 1.05 now. They will be withdrawn. And I think what Helen is recommending is that the recommendation, I think in number, sorry, bear with me, 1 are amended, and that we actually maybe say allow Arriva, maybe the scrutiny allows Arriva to put forward their proposals to mitigate the pressures as an alternative recommendation. Yeah, this has happened obviously in the background too. I mean, I actually wasn't aware of that until this morning myself, so I've only just been made aware that Arriva have done this. But yes, in terms of answering the question about the costs for a service, yeah, that is what we currently pay. We have, in terms of how the funding's broken down, we get a grant of about, I think it's 557,000 through the bus service support grant, and then we subsidise. We have around 654,000, I think it is, Helen, in terms of subsidies for bus services. So that's the cost. We re-procure those on a regular basis, and what we've seen, because a number of those services have not been re-procured since 2017, we've seen a huge spike, and this is the same thing that we're seeing in school transport at the moment as well. We've let contracts for 5-7 years, and they've stayed static in terms of their contract prices in that time. And then now that we're reprocuring them, the prices have shot up because just as everyone else, their fuel, insurance, wages, all those costs for bus operators have gone up as well in that intervening time. So we have seen a huge spike in terms of contractor costs.
Okay, and thank you. I'll bring you back in a second. So just to be clear on that, then we don't have to look at the X4 there because Arriva are going to cut the service themselves to some degree. Okay, thank you. Councillor Parkhurst.
Yes, I'm just going to add, Chair, that could consideration be given to using the electric buses that I believe we have.
Yeah, we have done that, but unfortunately no operator is willing to take them on at this stage because of the range. We have some options that going on at the moment. We're in negotiation around some increased battery storage, which would enable the range to be increased to, I think, to around 190 miles. But at the moment, we're in a situation where the bus operators are unwilling to take those vehicles on. They were funded through grant funding, so we are actually in negotiation with Transport for Wales at the moment about those vehicles going over to Transport for Wales and being used elsewhere. But yeah, we've had some serious difficulties with operators. So.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Pearce.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've used the number 5 where I live. It's 25-minute walk to the bus stop at Liverpool Road, the old Red Lion stop, and put my car into Cheshire Oaks, and it's very, very handy. But when we look at the report, this is on the council's core bus network. We spent a lot of time establishing what the county's core bus network was. And this proposal to finish it at Deeside Industrial Park does not benefit any residents who wish to shop at Ellesmere Port. You know, we're taking away an option. There's no train to Ellesmere Port unless you sort of drive to Hooton and get the train or drive to Chester, and it defeats the object. So when you get to Deeside Industrial Park, I've been there as well. Deeside Industrial Park, there's no terminus, there's no bus shelter. The stops at Zone 1 are pieces of grass in the middle of nowhere. So no shoppers will not benefit from getting on this bus and going to Zone 1, Deeside Industrial Park. It's on the number 5 timetable. The next stop after Zone 1 is Ellesmere Port. It's a short run. Yeah, it's a short run. I don't see the advantage. It's very much like all the expense paid at a park and ride proposal at Deeside Industrial Park, pretty much a white elephant now. So I don't think that this, on a core bus network, is a good idea to finish it at Deeside Industrial Park. There is no other way to get there by bus unless you then travel to Chester and then onto Ellesmere Port. So the journey would double. So I think we should protect our core bus networks. Yeah, we've heard about the changes in 105, but it's a road to nowhere. You won't find people working at Deeside Industrial Park using this. Yeah, that's why you built the big park and ride there, where you drive and then get a bus from there. But if the bus is terminating there, there is no advantage whatsoever. So the other side to this is, of course, the bus network grant. No additional bus network grant for 2024-25. So again, this is Welsh Government, and the leader might want to put this on his list as well. It's sending the wrong message. They're constantly trying to drive motorists off the road and trying to promote public transport, and at the same time cutting the funding and not adequately funding local bus services. It mentions the region's allocation is 5.63. What is the allocation for Flintshire specifically? Is it equitable across all the local authorities? So based on what I've just said, Chair, I cannot support the number 5, terminating a Deeside Industrial Park. It will impact and cut down on the ability of residents in Flintshire to access the facilities at Cheshire Oaks, which is the Cheshire Oaks, the cinemas, all the other recreational social benefits that offers. So I can't support it, Chair, sorry.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Pearce. And just in addition to that, before I bring the Chief Officer, I know you only said you found out this morning about the Arriva, but does the finances of that benefit us to the point that we don't have to look at? Okay, I'll bring you in.
No, they're two separate pots of funding, unfortunately. So the ones in 1.05 refers to the bus network grants, which is a separate pot of funding. So that's the regional grant, that's the 5.6 million that we referred to, that's split across the whole of North Wales, and I'm sure Helen will give you what Flintshire's allocation is in a minute. But those proposals under 1.05 were to address the shortfall in that regional pot of funding for us in Flintshire. The changes under 1.06, which is on 1.08, is to do with our own subsidies. So that's the funding I mentioned to you earlier on about. We get a separate grant called Bus Service Support Grant, which is about 557,000. And then on top of that, we have I think it's about 654,000 of our own revenue support funding, which is discretionary. We don't have to provide it to support the bus network in Flintshire. So that's the short. So the proposals for the Service 5 are to actually mitigate our own shortfall in funding. If we're unable to implement the changes to the Service 5, then we would have to declare a pressure of 270,000 in going forward into next year, which clearly with the budget situation is not going to be well received.
Thank you. Helen, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just the question raised about how much Flintshire are getting. We get the highest allocation of bus network grant for the region, so we were allocated 1.3 million this year.
And can I just clarify, that doesn't come to us, that goes to the bus operators directly.
That's our allocation to procure those services.
Yeah, but it goes to the operators. It's not, we're not benefiting in a certain way. It's basically in mitigation of what they lost as a result of the pandemic.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry,
yes, Councillor Pearce.
On the questions I asked, terminating the service at Deeside Industrial Park is mentioned at the bottom of page 243. It gives quite a number of bullet points. What's the actual saving by terminating the bus there rather than letting it carry on to Ellesmere Port? Thank you.
Yeah, I can answer that. The test the market occurred a while after this report was submitted, and we were looking at potential costs savings of 160 to 200,000 pounds a year.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Wakelam.
Yeah, thank you. You all know the stories of Pennaford buses and Dobbs Hill and Penmynydd. We have a bus that's funded by Denbighshire County Council and a Wrexham to Mull bus that you can't use for a job. And we currently have the issue of the village being split by school transport issues. This is just more, I've either missed this in a meeting or I've been surprised by it. My son started college in Deeside on 2 weeks ago, and last night he received an email that said, I hope you've been enjoying your first week at college. It went on to say that they do a lot for them, and then at the end it says we're now ending free school or free college transport for everybody, and that they will have to now pay. Were you aware of this? And there are no other buses that they can get to do it. He's not a full-time. Well, he's a full-time student, but it's only 3 days a week. The train is an option, but it's dangerous for the roads he has to cross. I'm just wondering where this came from. It's blindsided me. I've had several residents sending me last night that their kids in the village had it as well, and I'm just wondering where this came from. And
yeah, I seen that on social media this morning as well, and I think it was answered by the ex-cabinet member for Street Scene, who's now Assembly member, when saying nothing to do with the council. It's procured and done by the college or themselves, and they've put costings in there for subsidies for students. So I don't know if Chief Officer.
Yeah, absolutely right. Nothing to do with the council, unfortunately. I'm not aware of that. So.
It does name the local authority in their email as not providing any more funding. Just to.
Moving on, Councillor Swash.
Thanks, Chair. I support Councillor Pearce in opposing the cuts to these services. I can't support them. You know, I think we need better buses, not worse buses. That's the position of Flintshire People's Voice. And you know, it's obviously unfortunate that many of these subsidies go straight to private companies who will cut routes where they don't make a profit. And you know, whilst the council is also spending, you know, tens of thousands of pounds on things like investment zones, I can't support cuts to bus services. And you know, hopefully, with the Welsh Government's bus bill due to come to the Senedd next year, we'll be in a position in the next few years where we can end this sort of monopolisation of bus routes by having a municipal bus company.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Swash. I'll bring Councillor Ibbotson in.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for giving me discretion to speak. I've just got a query on the financial implications. Chief Officer said that if the option in 108 to terminate the service number 5 at the Deeside Industrial Park was not taken forward, there would be a consequent pressure of, I think it was £270,000 in next year's budget. Obviously, the additional cost of procuring this service in the most recent round was an extra 108,000, and we've heard that terminating the service at Deeside Industrial Park would save 160,000. So the scale of the consequent pressure of not curtailing this service seems to be significantly beyond the amount of revenue that we would anticipate saving. So can we have a wee bit more clarity on how the scale of that pressure has been calculated? And again, in response to what Councillor Pearce and Councillor Swash have said, I think bus services are hugely important. They're one of the most important services this council provides to residents. I think that if the axe is going to have to fall anywhere, it should not be on bus services. There are other things that this council does which are not as important as bus services. Councillor Swash has mentioned the investment zone and tax breaks for foreign businesses. I think we should be looking to make cuts there before we make cuts here.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Ibbotson. I'll bring in the Chief Officer.
Yeah, I think Helen has already clarified that when it was raised earlier, because obviously what's happened is we've re-procured the service while, I think, straight after writing this report, so the figures have changed slightly. If Helen can just clarify what the amount is in terms of the pressure that would have to be declared if a decision isn't taken.
Yeah, so the £270,000 that is mentioned is partly the increased cost of the Service 5 and partly what is being used for the increase on other services that we are accessing bus network grants to mitigate that increase. We can't guarantee that we'll get that bus network grant next year, so the proposal to terminate the 5 the DIP would go some way to mitigating that overspend for next budget year.
So if I might request a point of clarification, Chair.
By all means.
So there are other services which are contributing to the anticipated pressure if this decision is not taken. So even if this decision is taken, there will still be a significant pressure next year. Is that correct?
Yes, I think yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I have no further speakers. So the recommendations are on page 241. 3 recommendations there, specifically dealing with support, where it says support the options in the report. Basically, we're supporting option which is on reference 1.08. So can I have a mover? Councillor Lloyd, can I have a seconder? Councillor Dolphin, can I have a show of hands of those in favour? Okay, can I show of hands those against? And can I have a show of hands abstaining? Okay, that was 4-3-2, so the recommendation was carried.
Can you record my vote as against, please, Chair? Thank you.
Okay, I thereby close the meeting. Thank you all very much for your attendance today. Thank you.